guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm on a bit of a time crunch today because I got started on my video a lot later than I wanted, but it's okay. The nail is broken, but we're still going. Today's video is going to be on Carlton Gary. He was a serial killer in Columbus, Georgia. I live in Georgia, so hit a little close to home, but you know, it was an interesting story. So we're going to cover him. We're going to do some makeup. If you guys are new to this channel, we do makeup and true crime on here. And that's pretty much what we do. I got my iced coffee. It's not in an aesthetic cup because I didn't have time, but it still tastes amazing. Trigger warning, we will be covering some abuse, child neglect. That's the main thing. It's not as heavy as last week's episode, but obviously it's still bad. So, trigger warning on that. But let's get started. Before we get started, though, I want to put you guys on something. So, my hair, a little backstory on my hair journey. My natural hair color is like this color right up here. And when I was around 14, I started bleaching my hair. I started getting highlights, and then I just went full bleach. And I fully bleached my hair multiple times to the point where, like, I could pull my hair out. So, my hair has been super damaged, and it was a mess. It was so bad. But I have a friend in cosmetology school. Her name's Emily. And her Instagram is Hair by Emily, so go follow that. She was a lifesaver for me. She cut my hair and got it all leveled out. She put me on the right products. My hair literally has been changed because of her. But I want to put you guys on a brand she told me about that has literally saved my hair. Not Your Mother's. So Nexus and Not Your Mother's are the two hair brands I absolutely swear by. I use these hair brands almost daily. Well, I do use Not Your Mother's daily. And I wash my hair with Nexus. Nexus is a little bit more of an expensive drugstore brand, but it's worth it. But Not Your Mother's is dirt cheap, and it has saved my hair. So I use this 10-in-1 All Eyes on Me from Not Your Mother's, and it's a hairspray. Don't put this up on your roots because it'll make your hair really oily. But if you put it on your ends, it makes your hair so soft. And okay, so it's got 10 benefits. It detangles, it provides 450-degree heat protection, helps restore dry hair, controls frizz, moisturizes, adds shine, helps prevent split ends, nourishes, creates silkiness, and softens. And obviously all their stuff is cruelty-free and vegan. Amazing. I use their heat protectant. I use everything from Not Your Mother's, and it's literally changed my hair game. So their Smooth Moves hair mask is so amazing. Absolutely love it. But I just wanted to put you guys on that. So I will list all the makeup I'm using from our video down below, and let's get into it. Before we get cracking on today's video, if you're new to this channel, hi, my name is Helena, and I'm currently in college working on my bachelor's in criminology. I want to become a criminologist, and I'm here to educate you guys on true crime because I really think everyone should have a good understanding of, you know, people to look out for. I just think you should be very aware of your surroundings, especially this day and age. This world is not a safe place, and I think you should be educated on stuff that happens because stuff can happen to innocent people, and I want to teach you guys how to stay safe and educate you guys on some true crime cases because that is my passion in life. So, without further ado, let's get into today's story. So today we are talking about Mr. Carlton Gary. I think I'm going to call him Gary for today's video because I just like the way that rolls off the tongue. Because Carlton just, I don't know, that name's kind of cringe. I mean, it fits him because he was a turd, but I don't know. I just don't love the name Carlton. So, Carlton Gary was born December 15th, 1952, in Columbus, Georgia. We honestly don't know a lot about his parents, but they weren't married or together. I think what happened was he was in an accident, and the dad basically just left the picture. Once the mom got pregnant, he was a construction worker, and he was like, nope, I'm not doing this. I don't want a kid. So he was completely out of the picture. He had wanted nothing to do with Carlton. He did not pay child support. He was just not in Carlton's life at all. Carlton, I love how I said I was going to call him Gary, but I'm calling him Carlton anyways. Carlton said he did not actually meet his father until he was 12 years old. So, nothing to do with his dad. And his mom was dirt poor and just didn't really want to be a mom. She lived a very nomadic lifestyle. And she, I think, was super young and just wasn't ready to settle down and parent. So, she left Carlton with his aunt and great aunt pretty much all the time, so she could go do her thing. So Carlton was basically raised by his aunt and his great aunt, and they were maids to very rich white women, elderly white women in the neighborhood, which Carlton later grew up to target elderly white women in his killing spree. So a lot of people think that that is where he got his inspiration to target these women, because this was back in the late 50s, early 60s, so this was when segregation was at an all-time high. So I'm sure, as I completely forgot to mention, so sorry, Carlton was an African-American gentleman. So I'm sure his aunt and great aunt were not treated with the respect and kindness they deserved, because people back then could be turds and be racist. So I think his aunt and great aunt were very belittled by those rich elderly white women because they were maids, and I guess they just thought that they were better than them. So he just was surrounded by racism and hate from a very young age, and he just grew honestly to hate those women because he saw how they treated his grandma, or not grandma, his great aunt and aunt. So Carlton lived with them pretty much full time. His mom would come and go, but that's kind of all we know about Mr. Carlton's childhood. But another thing we did figure out is he did suffer some pretty severe head trauma from an apparent accident on the playground when he was in elementary school. So a lot of people think that may have had something to do with his serial killer tendencies as well, because I didn't talk about this in my serial killer video that I made, but head injuries in childhood is very common among serial killers. It's never been determined what exactly it does to the brain, but most serial killers suffered a head injury as a young child. So Carlton was one of these. So fast forward, we get into his early teens, 13, 14. He started using very heavy drugs and was just a troublemaker. By this age, he had already been arrested for armed robbery, assault, and arson, which is insane. It didn't say who he assaulted, but we already know he was already assaulting people at literally like 15. So yes, he just started living a kind of down and out life, using heavy drugs, and just not making the best choices. So around, I think, 16, it didn't exactly state when, but they said by 18 he was married with 2 kids. So I'm assuming around 15 or 16 he married his wife, Sheila, and they had 2 kids by the time he was 18. So like I said, it's kind of, we don't know. I don't know as much information about this story as I would like to, but I'm thinking around this time he really wanted to go somewhere new with his family and I guess start a new journey. So in early 1970, he moved to Albany, New York with his family, and unfortunately his criminal behavior continued. And our first assault took place in May of 1970. A older woman named Marion Brewer was in her hotel room or apartment in Albany, New York, and she was attacked and assaulted by Mr. Carlton here, and she was strangled with a pillowcase. But fortunately, she did survive this attack, and she was okay. But she was brutally attacked and strangled by this turd. So literally 2 months later, he's at it again, and he decides to attack an 85-year-old woman named Nellie Farmer in her hotel room or apartment. I don't know why I keep saying hotel. Her apartment, and it was like a block or 2 down from where Marion had been attacked. So he was staying in the general area with these attacks, and he unfortunately assaulted and raped her, I believe. Robbed her. It was brutal. And she was unfortunately strangled to death and killed in her apartment. What a turd. He's barely been in New York for like 4 months, and he's already got 2 assaults under his belt. So, unfortunately, he was not done with his reign of terror. He did commit a 3rd assault. We don't know the woman's name, but he assaulted a 3rd woman, and he was then arrested because the police were finally able to link his fingerprints to some they found at Nellie Farmer's murder. So they arrest Carlton, bring him in for questioning, and, they let him know, like, we found your fingerprints at this murder. Well, Carlton says, I did rob this woman, but I did not kill her. I had an accomplice named John Lee Mitchell who did murder this woman. Well, they believed Carlton somehow, and they arrested John Lee Mitchell without any physical evidence. So they could not place him at the crime. There was no evidence that he was anywhere near this crime scene or anything, but they did arrest him under suspicion of murder, and Carlton was then arrested for possession of drugs and robbery. So I guess Carlton maybe felt bad, but he ended up recanting his statement against John Lee Mitchell and said, no, he didn't kill this woman, whatever, like, he didn't murder her, I was just saying that. Well, here's where I'm having a little issue. So they ended up releasing, John, because they couldn't place him at the crime scene, which I get that, but they decided not to charge Carlton with the murder, even though his fingerprints were found at the crime scene. So they decide not to charge him with the murder, and he basically just got charged with armed robbery. And he was sentenced to a term at, Onondaga County Correctional Facility, which was located in Janesville, New York, which isn't too far from where his assaults occurred in Albany. Well, okay, so he was then paroled in 1975, so I guess he spent about 5 years at this correctional facility, and then he was paroled. And not long after he was paroled, a series of rapes, I hope I don't get taken down for that, but occurred in Syracuse, New York, which is not far from Janesville, where he was paroled at. And he was accused of them because, you know, of course, right when he gets paroled, these start taking place. So he was a suspect, and he was sent back to jail for parole violation. I'm assuming that was the parole violation. Like I said, we don't have a ton of clarity on this story, which makes me mad. But, and they said he was sent back to jail for a parole violation, which I'm assuming was, you know, the possible R's. I'm just going to say R's because I don't want to get my video taken down, but you should be able to say that word because that's a real thing that happens to real people. So, anyways, let's not rant about that. So, yes, he was sent back to jail and ended up escaping custody on August 22nd of 1977, and he left Janesville, and headed back to Columbus, Georgia. And it wasn't good. We're just going to say that. So, he started his reign of terror. He had one murder already in Albany, and the second he gets back to Columbus, he's starting it up again. So, let's get into that. So, Mr. Carlton here, not even a month. This is where I'm having a lot of frustration. The man isn't even home a full month. He decides to break into a woman's home. And 60-year-old Fern Jackson, she's in her home. I think she's sleeping. It's nighttime. She lives in Winton, which is a district of Columbus, Georgia. He breaks into her home, strangles her to death, and beats her. And she's also R'd. And, you know, flees the scene or whatever. Well, police are eventually called out there. I'm trying to decide what eyeshadow I want to use. And police arrive at the crime scene and they find Fern, but they find her with a nylon stocking knotted really tight around her neck. Which, if you guys don't know, nylon stockings are, a lot of times they're like a skin color tight that women wore back in the day. They wore them with dresses. It just kind of, it made your legs look nice and, you know, smooth and shaped and whatever. But it was just like tights that older women wore back in the day. So they find her nylon stocking tied around her neck, and they're obviously already thinking, okay, you know, this isn't just a normal, like, homicide we've got on our hands. Like, this probably is something a lot deeper because most serial killers are known for leaving, like, a trademark. So 9 days later, this turd bucket decides to strike again. A few blocks down, a 71-year-old named Jean Diamonstein is in her house. And this turd breaks in, strangles her, R's her, beats her, and she is found with the same type of stocking, nylon stocking, knotted around her neck as well. So I think at this point, they've already got 2 murders that they're obviously linked together because, not, you know, it's, what are the odds that 2 people get murdered and have a nylon stocking tied around their neck? So then, October 21st, Carlton strikes again. An 89-year-old named Florence Scheibel is asleep. Carlton breaks in, R's her, beats her, and then strangles her with the nylon stocking that she is later found with that tied around her neck. Y'all aren't even gonna believe this. 2 days later, 69-year-old Martha Thurmond in her house asleep. Turd breaks in. I'm just going to call him Turd. This man breaks in and once again beats her, R's her, and is found with the nylon stocking knotted around her neck. So that places us at October 23rd of 1977. And he's already got quite the track record for just moving back to Georgia. And he's already over here murdering people. So October 23rd, we had Martha getting killed. October 28th, 5 days later, a 74-year-old named Kathleen Woodruff is R'd and beaten. But she was not found with the nylon stocking tied around her neck when they arrived at the crime scene. And I guess a lot of people think like maybe something spooked him and he didn't have time to put the stocking around her neck. But I was like, maybe he's trying to throw them off, you know, because if they find this lady and she doesn't have the iconic stocking around her neck, maybe they're going to be like, oh, you know, this might not be our same man. Which I'm assuming they probably thought it was the same man, but you never know. So she was killed, but they did not find the stocking around her neck. Maybe he ran out of stockings. Who knows? So at this point, they're like, okay, something fishy's going on. We've got a serial killer on our hands. So he begins to get the nickname, the Stocking Strangler. How fitting is that? That's pretty doggone fitting. I don't know about you, but if I lived in a neighborhood and there was some crazy lunatic running around named the Stocking Strangler, it wouldn't take me very long to be out of that neighborhood and somewhere else. But maybe that's just me. But I would not be staying there. I'm just letting you guys know. I would be hightailing my butt out of there. So he takes a little break. Nobody knows what he was doing at this point. I guess, you know, a lot of times serial killers try and throw cops off their track by taking a break. Sometimes this break can be multiple years or a decade even. But he couldn't wait that long. So he only took a 4-month break before he decides to break into another woman's house on February 12th of 1978. A woman named Ruth Schwab was sleeping peacefully. Carlton breaks into her house and obviously, I guess, like, jumps on top of her to strangle her. Well, she, thank goodness, triggered a bedside alarm and ends up scaring him off, and she survives. So she's good. Well, he runs out of her house, and this man literally just runs down the street. Like, get a hint that you don't need to be killing people. He runs 2 blocks down and breaks into Mildred Borum's house, a 78-year-old woman, and R's and beats her and strangles her with the nylon stocking and knots it around her neck. Like, come on. Be for real. I don't know about you, but obviously he stalks his victims before he kills them because there's no way he could just automatically know that this woman was an elderly white woman. So he obviously stalks the women in the neighborhood before killing them, which I don't know what's creepier, that or that he ties a nylon stocking around their neck. Because quite honestly, I don't like either one. So, yep, kills her. And is in, you know, on the run, I guess. I wonder where he's hiding. Like, is he living back with his aunt? Where is he? He's got to be pretty sneaky to be able to get away with this many crimes and not be caught yet? Like, what? So around this time, police do believe they have an African-American man that is committing these crimes. because they think they're racially motivated because they've all been elderly white women. So they're thinking they've got themselves a African-American male. So they release that to the public, release the information they have, or like who to be on the lookout for. And right after they release this, they end up getting letters mailed into the police station by a man who goes by the chairman of the forces of evil. That is quite the name right there. And a lot of, okay, so let me get into this for a little minute here. Let's get into this man. Woo! I don't know what that was, but, so the chairman of the forces of evil. Who is this man? Okay, so he writes in letters to the police station, and I'm assuming, you know, like, I don't know, you guys better have watched The Bodyguard with Whitney Houston and Kevin Costner, but you remember when they found that letter, or like you see movies where the letters have like cut out magazine letters spelling out the words? I'm assuming it was something like that, but it may have been handwritten because they ended up tracing him back. So he starts mailing in letters to the police, you know, saying he's the chairman, whatever, and saying that he's going to kill these certain black women if the suspect isn't apprehended. So now the police have even more pressure on them because he's over here threatening death to these African-American women. And he had names, so, like, they knew it was serious because, like, he was naming real people. If the suspect isn't apprehended. Well, they at first think maybe this is their man. That maybe this is the Stocking Strangler. But it is not. It is... Where's my eyelash glue? There it is. Okay, so they think it's that he's the Stocking Strangler. They end up being able to trace the letters back to a man whose name was William Henry Hance. So, y'all aren't even going to believe this. When I read this, I was like, there is no way this is real. Okay, so they trace him back to a man named William Henry Hance, who also turns out to be a serial killer. So now we have two serial killers, and they find him is an African-American male, so of course they are like, oh, this is probably him. Well, William Henry Hance was a serial killer who targeted prostitutes, and he would beat them to death with a jackhammer. There's too many serial killers over here in Columbus, Georgia. Y'all need to get out. Y'all need to leave, because I don't have time for that. So, they find him, they arrest him on April 4th, and end up tracing him back to 3 different prostitutes that he murdered. And they hold him in jail, and they're like, well, maybe this is our dude. Well, it's not, because while Hance was in jail, on April 20th, another murder occurs. It is, thankfully, not for her, but thankfully this is Carlton's last victim. And it is a 61-year-old named Janet Kofer. And he breaks into her home and, you know, beats her, R's her, and obviously kills her. So they're like, well, obviously the chairman isn't our dude, but at least they found him and got him arrested for the murders he did commit. And they only tied him to 3 murders, but a lot of people think that he was definitely related to a lot more than just 3. Eyelash. Ooh, I like that. I like that eyelash. That is purty. Okay, so, y'all, this story has so many twists and turns. So, they still don't have Carlton. They still don't know who's killing these older white women. So, about a week after the murder of Janet, a series of robberies takes place. Okay, so the first in a series of robberies. So on hold on, let me get the date right. April 27th of 1978 in Greenville, South Carolina, a man breaks into like a restaurant or like a little diner, holds them at gunpoint, and robs them. So this is just the first of a lot of these armed robberies. This man ends up becoming named the Steakhouse Bandit because he targeted restaurants and broke into them. Hold on, y'all. I'm being very precise here and trying to cut that. Okay. So, yeah, Steakhouse Bandit is what Carlton. It's Carlton. So he's the Stocking Strangler, and now he's the Steakhouse Bandit. He is just all over the place. Now he's in South Carolina. So I guess he couldn't find any more people that he wanted to murder in Columbus. So now he's heading over to Greenville, South Carolina. So they finally, 8 months later, and tons of armed robberies, they finally arrest Carlton for a similar holdup, an armed robbery that took place in Gaffney, which is near Greenville. So they book him for a similar holdup, and he ends up confessing to all of the robberies, the armed robberies, and confesses to be the Steakhouse Bandit. And this man, okay, so he confessed to the robberies, and he got a 21-year sentence for armed robbery. They put this man in a minimum security prison in Columbia. And I'm just baffled because do they not have records that he escaped custody from the last prison he was in? I guess they don't, but they put him in a minimum security prison, and of course, March 15th of 1983, escapes. So 5 years. He must love escaping after like a 5-year period. He escapes. And they don't track this man down until 14 months later. A year and 2 months later, in May 3rd, 1984, at a motel in Albany, Georgia, he was arrested. They finally were able to track him down and held as a fugitive in South Carolina. Well, he ends up getting linked with a burglary that happened in October of 1977 in Columbus, Georgia. And so they book him for that, but they end up getting his fingerprints and tracing it back to the Scheibel, Thurman, and Woodruff murders. So then they're like, well, not only are you robbing restaurants at gunpoint, you're a serial killer. So they trace him back to all 3 of these murders, which, thank goodness, they finally got him. Alright, so I'm going to be done with my makeup after I finish the story. Okay, I need to start going. So they end up tracing him back to those 3 murders, and he goes to court. Jury deliberates for 3 hours and ends up finding him guilty on all 3 counts of murder. And he was sentenced to death. He's currently still just chilling like a villain in prison and waiting on death row. But this part I did forget to add. He was, So William Henry Hance, the serial killer that was arrested for the prostitute murders, the chairman of the Forces of Evil, he was executed by electrocution on May 31st of 1994. I just wanted to let you guys in on that. So that's pretty much our story on Mr. Carlton here. I just found that fascinating because I do live in Georgia. 99% sure I've been to Columbus, Georgia. I can't remember for sure, but pretty sure I have been. And yeah, good old Carlton out here. It always fascinates me, like, that serial killers normally target a specific group of people. I hope I never fit into any of the categories that these serial killers target, because that would really suck, wouldn't it, to get killed by a serial killer? That would not be fun. I love how I downplay that. That would be really bad. I hope nobody knows anyone that has been killed by a serial killer. That would be crazy. So yeah, that's our story. I gotta find a good lip gloss. I think I'm just gonna put on a white pink one. Oh, there's something. There's like a hair on that lip gloss and it scared me. Alright, guys. So that's the finished look. That's the finished story. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about Mr. Carlton Gary and his horrible acts. Please comment down below another true crime case you'd like to hear. And subscribe. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.